Hello, Mejafupa. Today we are baking some sardine and shito plus tuna and shito sandwich bread. This bread was so delicious. My crew ate it straight from the oven and I couldn't even take any photos. It was just delicious. But I had my reservations about this bread, and whilst I was thinking about it, they ate it all. I'll let you know my reservations in a bit, but let's get straight into it. So for the bread, you need some yeast. I started off proofing the yeast by adding some sugar to it and then a bit of the measured water. All the measurements are provided in the link in the description box. I followed on to sieve the flour that I was using to help aerate it and remove any lumps. I also sieved the nutmeg to remove the lumps as well, and then added in some salt followed by the sugar, and I mixed all of this up until it was well incorporated. I set that aside and then got on with the wet mix. So the wet mix, I added some melted butter to the bowl and then added in some yogurt which I had brought to room temperature and mixed this really well until it was well incorporated. I then followed by adding the flour into the mix, a bit of the flour at a time, mix and then add a bit more flour. I didn't really want to mix everything totally because I had other things I was going to add. It was just to be able to get the wet mix and the dry mix to mix up a bit. And then once it was at this stage, I added in the proofed yeast and then mixed it up. I was also going to add water, so I didn't want to mix everything totally. So at this point I added in the measured water and then mixed it up. This dough is quite a wet, sticky dough, so do not be worried when you feel it is a bit wet. Just use the recommended amount of water, not more or not less. I mix it all up, and at this stage it needed the hand work to be done. So I did away with the spatula and got my hands into the bowl and used my hands to mix it all up, starting to knead it a bit at a time. At this stage it was more of just trying to get everything to mix up, and then the kneading would be done later once I had everything together. Now that the dough had come together, I just allowed it to rest before kneading. Resting for about 20 minutes was enough. It helps the dough to knead beautifully, especially with this dough being sticky. When you knead it straight away, you find it a bit difficult, but when you let it rest, it becomes really easy to knead. As you can see, kneading, it looked like it had been kneaded even a bit before I started. So using a bit of flour dusted on the surface of the place being kneaded, it helps to make this sticky dough manageable whilst kneading. So this kneading was a bit of work. I used about 40 minutes to knead it to that stretchy, lovely dough that is needed to help the dough be really nice. You want the gluten in the dough to activate. So quite a bit of kneading is done. So a bit of stretch to knead. You stretch, you pull to yourself, stretch, pull, and sometimes also hitting it on the surface of your kneading area really helps to activate that gluten, and you start to see your dough becoming stretchy and really malleable. So I must say I really enjoyed doing this, kneading the dough. It's such an exercise, And really, if you're stressed out, this is a good job for you. Plus, I love the aroma that starts to come out of the dough. You can really smell the fresh bread aroma, and that's one thing I like about baking my own bread. So this is something I wanted to show you. If you find the dough being too heavy to manage, because this is quite an amount of dough, so you take it in portions. You knead the dough in portions, stretching it out and bringing it together. And soon you start to realize that the dough is now nice and smooth. It's really malleable. It's just pillowy soft, more like fufu. For fufu eaters. Another way to check your dough that it's well kneaded is to do the knife test. Use a knife to cut through it, and you see that it comes together. You see the layers of the dough, and you know it is good. So now the dough was ready. It was ready for proofing. I buttered my bowl, and then I put the dough in the bowl, making sure some of the butter was coating the dough. I covered the dough with my cloth, and I allowed it to prove. Now on to the filling. So I made a tuna and shito and sardine and shito sandwich filling. What I needed was the tuna, the sardine, and some onions. So with the tuna and sardine, I strained off the oil that it was in, and I used the oil to saute the onions. I chose to use this tuna oil for this, but either one will do. So to saute the onions, all I wanted was the onions to become nice and soft and just a little bit translucent. And also the excess oil, I didn't add any extra oil. This is all the oil that was from the tuna, 2 cans of tuna, and I also got to strain that off. So to mix the tuna filling, I added some of the onions, sauteed onions, to the tuna, and then I added some After Village Kitchen's shito papebi. You need to use some delicious shito because we are not adding any spices to this, because the shito is so flavorful. It's enough to make this filling really delicious. So for the sardines too, I did the same. Added in some of the sauteed onions and After Village Kitchen's shito. So now that the fillings were ready, it was time to check on the dough. And at this point, I was like, oh my goodness, the bread gods were not with me, because this dough had stayed overnight, 24 hours, and I still didn't get the rice that I was looking for. There was some rice, but the rice was not what I was looking for. So I knew I wasn't going to get the perfect results that I wanted. And this was due to a number of reasons, which I will share with you in another video when I make for this particular recipe. So it was now time to get the dough into smaller bowls and then fill it up with our 2 fillings. So with a bit of flour on the kneading surface, I cut up the dough into 2 and then into smaller portions. You can weigh it up if you want to make sure you get the same size of bread. But you know what? This is home cooking, and the beauty of home cooking is having different sizes, roughness, and anybody can choose. I want a big one, I want a small one. So I kept it without weighing. So I let the dough also rest. Once I had cut it up, I let it rest for about 10 minutes. Whilst it was resting, I used the time to batter my bread pans or loaf pans. I used my fingers to do the job just because it brought back memories of how we used to do it when I was little. But you can equally use a brush to do this. or you can even melt the butter and use your brush to use it to butter the loaf pans quite easily. So now that was done, I got ready to fill my dough balls with the sandwich filling. So with a bit of flour on the surface and my rolling pin, I stretched it out into a circle and then added in a bit of the filling, about a tablespoonful at a time, and then brought it all together to seal it at the bottom. It's important that the bottom is well sealed before putting them in the loaf pans. So I went on to do some more, taking a bit of dough off if you get the feeling that it's a little bit too big than the others. As much as it is nice and rough and not equal, you want them to be almost the same size to help them bake evenly. So tuck everything nicely, pinch the bottom, and then roll it on the floured surface, and it helps to seal it beautifully. Put it in your loaf pan and you're ready to go, almost ready to bake, but we have to do a second proof. So now that the tuna filling was done, I went ahead to do the same with the sardine filling. Same process, a little at a time, a spoonful at a time. Pinch it together, make sure all the filling is in and it is well sealed at the bottom. Roll it on the floured surface and it gives it a lovely seal. Thank you, Medafupa, for joining me today to bake this bread. I hope you will try it. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you to those who have subscribed and who are supporting this channel. I really do appreciate it. But if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, like and share this video and help this channel grow. Thank you so much. So here we are. We had all the fillings finished and I had a bit of dough left, so I decided to make that into one loaf. So all that I was doing was to make sure the bottom is sealed properly. I have it nice and even along the whole length, and also to make sure the length is the same as my loaf pan. So now I had all my dough filled with the sandwich filling. Everything was looking the same. We didn't know which one was tuna or which one was sardine. So one thing I use, or you can do, is to use a new blade or a very sharp knife to help create some designs on your dough. It really gives it that mark, and you know this is tuna or this is sardine. And also on my loaf, I was just, back home they used to have these designs, which bakery they had different designs that they used to mark which bakery the bread was from. So I was just going ahead to do something similar. So I covered it with my napkin and allowed it to proof for about an hour or until I had seen it double in size. We were so impatient because the aroma at this stage was so good, but the dough was failing to rise as much as I wanted. But yes, we had to move on to bake it, and I brushed it with some egg wash, a bit of egg and a bit of milk, and I baked it in the oven at a temperature of 180 degrees Celsius for about 30 to 40 minutes. When it came out of the oven, I brushed it with some melted butter. This step is optional, but it just gives it that lovely brown shiny look. Same with the egg wash, it's also optional. If you do not want it, don't do it. But it really gives it that lovely shine, and I think it's attractive. So here's my sandwich bread, two types, tuna, and this is the Sardine Shito sandwich bread, and this is the Tuna Shito sandwich bread. The aroma was so good. My kids just came around before I could even take photos. They were there eating. Look at that little one. He just, he had eaten one whole one already. This is someone who does not eat bread at all, but every time I bake fresh bread, he is there, and the aroma of this bread was just so good. Everybody was there, they were all eating, and I could not take any photos. So this tells you that this recipe was so good. But I had my reservations because the dough did not rise the way I wanted it to. So I will make this video another time when all the bread gods are with me, and hopefully I can share all the mistakes and the tips that you need for a good rise. But this was delicious. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you really enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notification button, and don't forget to share with your friends, and keep watching all the other videos I have on here. Till the next video, see you soon.